to my next episode of my podcast, Prism, Inside the Creative Mind. My name is Tania Fraser. I'm an oboe player and a chamber musician and the artistic director of Southern Cross Soloists here in Brisbane. And today I've got a fascinating guest who has had an extraordinary career as one of Australia's leading contemporary dancers. And she's now here in Brisbane. I'd like to welcome you to Amy Hollingsworth, who is the artistic director of the Australasian Dance Collective. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you so much.
We first met when we were working together for Expressions Dance Theatre on The Host, and it was amazing to meet you and work with you as the assistant to Natalie on that production. And now you are the artistic director of the company. Yeah,
I feel so fortunate, privileged, and really grateful to have this opportunity. I have always had a really deep affinity with the company as EDC and now ADC. And as you said, I originally worked here back in, I think it was 2015, as Natalie's right-hand lady. And not only did I learn a lot about the legacy of the company and the fact that it had been run by very strong women.
Yes.
Maggie Sietsma being the founding director, and then Natalie Weir. Yes. It was what they stood for as well. They had a deep desire to collaborate and create new works that really celebrated multiple art forms.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, Australia has such an incredible track record of producing some of the best dancers in the entire world. And you've had an incredible international career, of course, before you came back. But let's talk about like how you actually started. You're from Victoria, but you didn't grow up in Melbourne.
No, I actually grew up in several different regional areas. I was born near Horsham, near the Longronon Agricultural College, because my father was in training to be a veterinarian. And it's a family joke that they only just made it to the hospital because Dad was insisting he could take care of it, and my mother didn't want to be delivered by a veterinarian.
Yeah, he can deliver a horse, he can deliver a baby.
I know. So I did my first, year of life was in that area of Victoria, and then we moved to the Gippsland Lakes when I think I was about 18 months old. Most of my childhood was spent there on a farm, and
doing
pretty
farm
much
things.
Run out the door when the sun's over the, just peeking over the horizon, and Mum would be like, be back when the sun's overhead for some lunch. And
so it couldn't be further from the world of ballet.
100%. But I was very active, and I had a pretty wild imagination. I think just being able to be outside and be quite creative with my play.
Well, because there wasn't a lot. I think, I also grew up not in the country, but on acreage where there was no one to play with, and I just had to come up with my own things.
Exactly. And I think sometimes having that space creates the environment for wild free thought to flow, because you're not busy on certain activities. So I daydreamed a lot, and I'm pretty sure I danced around a lot of paddocks.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you get into such a regimented hobby as ballet?
Well, obviously my memories of when I was small are quite fuzzy. I do remember attending some classes when I was very young, maybe 5 or 6, and I actually found ballet a bit too regimented.
Yes.
I was a bit more of a free spirit, but I played a lot of sports, and I was very interested in being very physical.
Yeah.
And so I think it was when I was probably 9 or 10, I had a very good friend who went to dance classes, and she was always talking about how much fun it was. And I think I wound up in a ballet class just so I could hang out with my friend.
Your friend, wow.
Yeah, even though it did create a little bit of an axis of tension, because when I rocked up into class and I had natural ability, my teacher became quite fixated on, on me, and said to my mum, she's very talented.
Yes.
And I think it put my nose, my friend's nose out of joint slightly. But after a few years of working with that very local ballet school, it was suggested that I start travelling to a slightly bigger school.
Oh, okay.
In Traralgon, not far from Morwell, which is the Latrobe Valley in
Yes.
Victoria. And so I started the commute, which was almost sort of an hour and 3/4 commute each way to go to dance classes. It started as once a week, turned into twice a week, and it escalated quite quickly. And I was sort of in my first year of high school, and we all made the very big decision for me to move and live with my ballet teacher so that I could undertake a lot more training.
Yes.
And I started doing well in the local Eisteddfods.
Yep.
And then one of the adjudicators for one of the local Eisteddfods happened to be a woman by the name of Gayleen Stock.
Oh, wow.
Who went on to become the director of the Australian Ballet School,
Yes.
and then eventually the director of the Royal Ballet School
Yeah.
in London. And so she saw me in an Eisteddfod and actually sought my mother after the show and said, we really need to get Amy to Melbourne into full-time training. So yeah, I feel like the trajectory was pretty much, once it started, it was rolling.
But it could have almost not started because
absolutely.
I mean, a lot of children start when they're still in nappies.
Yeah.
Or at least at 4 or 5. But
Yeah.
to start at 9 is sort of considered a little bit late, isn't it?
I guess so. But I guess because I was fresh to it, the desire was there, and I wasn't jaded at all. I mean, it sounds strange to say a 9-year-old could be jaded, but I know that a lot of people find that arduous rigour that's expected, especially with classical dance, can sometimes create fatigue. And
well, it's interesting because although I started the piano and the clarinet when I was 9, I started oboe at 14.
Oh, wow.
Which was very, very late.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what the difference was. When I had, before that, my teachers, they'd say, go home and practice this and this and this and do that. And I never did it. And then I'd come to my lessons and pretend I practiced when I'd, done 15 minutes. But with the oboe, because I was 14, I actually did what the teacher told me.
Yeah.
I did every single thing every day. And so I didn't create any bad habits, and I think that was one of the reasons I did so well, because if you do it young without thinking, you can create bad habits, and then it takes forever to get rid of those bad habits.
100%.
So in a way, starting older is
I guess older and having that sort of more focused and really dedicated approach to it can make a real difference. Yeah, so it escalated quite quickly for me, and we made the very big decision for me to move to Melbourne.
Yes. Did you got into the ballet school? Did you?
Yeah.
Ballet school.
I did have to do 1 year of full-time training at the National Theatre Ballet School, which is based in St Kilda, as I was too young.
Yes.
I think I was
14
at the time, and I was still doing, I guess it was year 9. And at the Australian Ballet School at the time, they only had 3 years worth of students in the Aussie Ballet School. It's expanded a lot over the last decades. But I had to be 15 in order to join, and my birthday being in November. So we had to undertake a year of full-time training at National Theatre. And also Gayleen suggested to us that it was a good idea just to have had a year of full-time training before entering into such an elite school. Yeah.
And were they at that time with the Australian Ballet School, were they sort of diminishing the numbers each year? Or I know there was a time when they took quite a lot in, and each year they had less and less and less, which was tough on those kids.
I was definitely part of that cohort. I remember we started our first year, I think there were 30-something students. I know that in the last year, especially with the men, only 6 men graduated. It did shrink a lot.
And it's tough to do that and the schoolwork.
So my grandfather, I was a lot younger than everyone else in my year. The next youngest student in my year was at least a full year older than me. And so I was the only one that was grappling with schoolwork for all 3 years.
Yes.
So I did year 10, 11 and 12 all by correspondence. So it wasn't during school hours, it was after school hours.
That must have been tough.
This was back in the day when school by correspondence was you'd fill everything out, by hand, send it in the post and wait for it to come back with your marks.
I know. Can you imagine? How did we survive without the internet?
Well, it was just a lot slower. It was a lot slower.
Yeah.
And I know that one of the subjects that I studied in year 10 was French.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And it was quite funny because you would have to record yourself on a cassette because to check pronunciation.
Yeah,
so you'd have to repeat sentences and, send your tape off and wait another 2 weeks. And so sometimes I'd go for weeks pronouncing things completely incorrectly until they came back to me to say, no, you should be saying it like this.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And all that time you were boarding, obviously, in Melbourne, and your parents didn't come with you.
Yeah. Mum came up to Melbourne for one of the years that I was there just to sort of, I guess, help settle me in Melbourne. But I did, I lived in a flat with friends quite young, actually.
Yeah. It must have been very tough. And did you go from there to London, or?
No, I went actually when I was 17 when we graduated. My first job was with Royal New Zealand Ballet.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so I went straight to New Zealand and actually didn't come home for over 17 years. I say didn't come home as in didn't come home to live.
Yes.
I obviously came to visit.
Yes.
But I went, I had 3.5 years in New Zealand and then I spent 2.5 years in Denmark. And then wound up
with Peter Schaefer's, is it?
Yes,
which was like one of the most
extraordinary classical
cutting
dancer.
edge classical. Yeah.
So that was a wonderful experience. But when I was living in Denmark and working with Peter Schaefer's, I started, I guess what I'd always known, maybe on a subliminal level, was starting to really surface in me, which is I loved and thrived on the new creations. And ballet, being an art form that has a huge amount of history and a lot of it is based on, preserving that heritage of the big ballets like Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty, etc. While I loved doing those ballets, I craved the new creations. And the more contemporary work I did in ballet companies, the more I was leaning towards seeking a contemporary career. And it's not often that people at sort of right in the middle of their classical career, because I was literally about 24 or 25, made the leap over to contemporary dance. And it happened when I was in Denmark. I did a short project over my summer break with a contemporary company, 3 point shoes away. I loved it. And it just completely captured me.
Oh, fantastic.
So that's when I moved to London and joined the very well-known Rombert Dance Company.
And did you already start doing your own choreography at that point? Is it sort of, do they go hand in hand if you become a contemporary dancer? One element of that is doing your own choreo for your solos? Or?
Well, I guess it's experimenting with movement. I mean, I think it's become a lot more commonplace these days for choreographers to acknowledge the contribution of the dancers to the choreography. So the concept might be the choreographers, but the choreographer always usually works in collaboration with the dancers.
And sort of seeing what works on their bodies.
Exactly. And I know that as a contemporary dancer, when I first started, it was terrifying and exhilarating all at once, because all of a sudden I had people standing in front of me saying, move from here to here, but find a different pathway. And it was like, I have to contribute to this.
Yes.
Which
in ballet is the exact opposite. It's like, no, the arm's like that. And it's so specific, isn't it?
And that specificity, I think I found towards the end a bit suffocating, because I wanted to have freedom and choice and, well, not just choice, but a bit of autonomy and feeling like I was part of the creative process.
And it's a collaboration. I mean, in the world of music, I think that's the difference also between being in a symphony orchestra, where you pretty much have to do what you're told when when you're told, and compared to a chamber music ensemble where the whole thing's a collaboration and nobody's in charge. It's all just equal, and we all just trying to create this music together.
Yep.
And so, tell me about London. Tell me about the Rombert company.
I mean, it's the company, Rombert Dance Company, is the same age as the Queen. And so it always makes it easier for me to remember how old the Queen is. But
yes.
I joined Rombert in 2000, and so it was their 75th anniversary that year. So it was the Queen's 75th anniversary as well. And the company is actually the oldest dance company in Britain. It's older than the Royal Ballet.
Really?
And it started as a ballet company by a woman named Marie Rombert. And I still, to this day, am incredibly inspired by her, because she recognised that you cannot, in order to survive, ignore evolving. And so she evolved the company from a ballet company. She became a bit more of a commercial, a contemporary venture, went back to ballet, and then again found herself back leading the company as a contemporary company, because she knew that in order to capture audiences, she needed to keep the company evolving. Subsequent directors obviously put their stamp on the company, but when I joined, the company was directed by Christopher Bruce, who is probably most well known for his seminal work entitled Ghost Dancers, which actually Queensland Ballet have danced recently.
Yes.
Which was amazing for me, because I was one of the cast members that danced it for many years during his tenure at Rombert. So to be there with Queensland Ballet dancers as they were learning and assimilating his style was fantastic.
Yeah, definitely.
But I was with Rombert for about almost 7 years, and the biggest impact was it being a repertory company and a contemporary company. We were constantly working with different choreographers, both on existing pieces. They would occasionally curate seminal works from different contemporary choreographers, but then also having a lot of new work made. And I just learnt so much. The learning curve was very steep in the first year or two. And then as my confidence grew, I just felt like I really flourished at Rombert.
Oh, that's fantastic. So why did you come back to Sydney Dance Company?
Well, in a very abbreviated version of the story, a fellow dancer at Rombert Dance Company when I joined was a young man by the name of Raphael Bonicello. And so we often danced together in works. He was often my dance partner, and he was emerging as a choreographer. He would drag dancers from the company into the studio in our lunch breaks and say, come on, let's make a work. And whenever Rombert did sort of like emerging makers seasons, he was always front and centre with his hand up. And we worked very long and hard together on, we just always loved being in the studio, creating and playing. And Chris Bruce stuck his head into the studio one lunchtime and said, I really like what you're doing here. I think I'm going to commission you to put it on at Sadler's Wells.
Wow.
And so Raf, this was his big break. It was a big moment, having a main stage commission. And I remember the curtain going up, and I started right up against the curtain, so it was a bit shocking for the audience because I appeared quite close to them. I remember that feeling of the curtain going out at Sadler's Wells, sliding up my face almost, and seeing this huge sea of people and just going, this is amazing, this moment for Raf as a choreographer. And ironically, in the audience was a man by the name of William Baker, who was Kylie Minogue's creative director. And William approached Raf to choreograph for Kylie. And so Raf and I worked together. I supported him in his creation of Kylie's Fever Tour back in 2002, I think it was. And Raf's choreography was just evolving, and his name and voice as a maker was growing. And when we got to about 2006, I kept saying to him, if you ever start a company, I'll come with you. And he said to me, I think it was 2005, he said, okay, put your money where your mouth is.
Oh, no.
Next year, we're doing it. And so Bonicello Dance Company was born. So I actually left Rombert and went freelance in London, but obviously to be a founding member of Bonicello Dance Company. And because it was a project-based company, I worked, at fairly regular intervals with Raf, and then I worked with other choreographers in the interim periods, and that included people like Hoffer Schechter and Michael Clark, some of the really big names in contemporary dance in the UK. And Raf and I worked together for quite a few years on Bonicello Dance Company, and I evolved into the role of assistant director. And then he made a work on Sydney Dance when I was still over in the UK doing work with Bonicello Dance Company, and that's when they offered him that job. So we tried for 1 year to run both companies.
Oh wow! Oh my gosh!
So the final year of Bonicello Dance Company, I was touring around Europe. Raf came over and made that last show, and then he went back to Sydney Dance.
Yeah, and you were sort of pretty involved with running the Bonicello company.
Yes, so while he was in Australia, I was handling the Bonicello Dance.
So you already know a lot about handling companies.
And it was a company of 6 dancers, so it was exactly
so
the same size as this company. So I guess there's a familiarity with the size of this organisation that feels very, it's very familiar to me.
Yes.
But we did find it was just a bit too hard. We were spread too thin, so we put Bonicello Dance Company into hibernation, and obviously I came out to Sydney to join Raf as his dance director. And I did 2 more seasons dancing with Sydney Dance, and then I just found that juggle of performing and management, just was getting a little, maybe I just needed a break.
Exactly,
so I stepped away from being on stage at that point, and that's how I wound up back in Australia.
Yes, and that's when you came up here to assist Natalie and stuff. Well, something I found amazing when we worked together was for a choreographer. Choreographers have always incredibly musical people, but you took that upper level by actually being able to read a score, and your mother's a professional musician.
Well, not a professional musician. She probably could and should have been a concert pianist, if I'm honest, but she, back in that time, was sort of strongly encouraged to become, I'm trying to find nice words here, strongly encouraged to become a teacher, which was a sensible job.
Yeah.
So her deep love is music, but because she obviously teaches piano as well as understands music.
She's a piano teacher,
But she has since merged her 2 loves, and she writes musicals for her kindergarten kids.
Oh wow!
So they choose characters, and she writes small songs for them. It's so sweet.
Fantastic. And so, did you have to learn an instrument when you were growing up, or you?
Yeah, I learnt piano, and then I played saxophone for quite a few years. I do not remember why.
Because it was a cool instrument.
Probably.
Cool instrument.
But I still have a great love of the piano. I'd probably be embarrassed to play in public, but I do love it. And I love music. My dad also is very gifted as a vocalist, and he still sings, even though he's in his 70s now. He still sings in amateur productions of
fantastic.
Lots of different choral pieces actually.
I mean, the two are so intertwined, and I've always found, I did dancing from when I was 4 to 16 really seriously. I would have, I didn't have the right physical tool to be able to do it professionally, but I think that the training in dance is really one of the reasons I am a good musician now. And whenever I've had a student come through who also does dance, they're just so talented. They pick up everything so quickly, the rhythms in their bodies, and I just think dance is, it doesn't matter what type, I think just doing that is so beneficial for people in their lives, but also an incredible way to be in the moment and to de-stress from all the craziness that we're suffering from, things like that.
Absolutely.
And so it's interesting. I mean, how did you feel over these last 2 years? You've got your job here at Australasian Dance Collective, and then you got hit almost on your first week with COVID lockdowns and...
Yeah, well, it was a bit of a strange timeline for me, because I actually stepped into the role at the beginning of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
But historically, with most arts organisations, in terms of handover, usually the outgoing director has programmed the year ahead, or at least some of the year ahead.
Yeah, that's right.
Which needs to happen so that a company can keep functioning during that handover period. And so 2019, we had a really stable and clear path for the year, and it was very much delivering Natalie's final year of the vision for the company. And at the end of 2019, we did a big launch going, right, 2020, here's the new look and feel and
you probably
visioning.
spent the whole of 2019 coming
preparing.
up with your plan. Yes.
Well, I mean, I stepped into the job with the plan, because I always had an idea of what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so 2019 was sort of a lot of work in the background, preparing and cultivating and ensuring that everything could roll out smoothly. And we started 2020 with a bang. You know, we were preparing for our first major season 3 that was going to premiere at QPAC, and I think we were meant to open. Actually, not I think, I do know we were meant to open on the 1st of April.
Oh, no.
Which, you know, I see the irony now. April Fool. And of course, as we all know, March was when things started to get really hairy. And we had an international collaborator out from London, and it got to the point where daily we were watching the news going, do we need to put you on a plane to get you home ahead of anything being locked down? And so we wound up sending him back, and we sort of did maybe another few days going, are we going? No, we're not going to. And then we, of course, as we all know, by about the 20th of March, we were all heading home.
That's right. Yeah.
And shutting up shop. So none of our programming for 2020 was executed as it was planned. All of it sort of either was postponed or reimagined or whatever had to happen.
Right, yeah.
And so this has really been the first year of being able to illustrate the vision.
Yes.
So it's been a strange directorship so far.
And well, we're so lucky here in Queensland that this year hasn't been too bad with lockdown. We had the one lockdown mid-year, but yeah, we were very lucky. Have you been okay with audiences? And
we have. We actually so thrilled to be able to say that we've had actually one of the strongest years of patronage and ticket sales that this company's ever had.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful, given that we've had that kind of result in a year that is the kind of year it was.
Right.
And I've been so painfully aware of many of my colleagues across Australia and throughout the world have not been afforded that.
Yes, exactly. Well, I particularly in the music world, my colleagues in Sydney and Melbourne, I mean, I just kind of, it's almost unfathomable to think they've been sitting at home all this time.
Absolutely.
But, you know, I think the silver lining, if you could call it that, is I think once the performing arts was taken away from everybody, we suddenly realised that community does need it, because so much of the time I think we're having to, you know, be ambassadors to try to get the arts some attention and answer that question as why are the arts important?
Yeah.
And it's sort of become quite clear this last year and a half that people want it and they miss it when they don't. When it's not there, they miss it.
Yeah. And I think the other reflection I've had is, you know, people think of the arts as being, you know, what we see on stage or the music we listen to, etc. But I think there's hopefully becoming a greater awareness of how much the arts, or at least creativity, permeates our lives. I mean, I sort of jokingly say to any of my friends that have nothing to do with the arts, I was like, okay, say you were walking down the street this morning and you select a song to listen to while you're walking, you are essentially curating the soundtrack of your life.
Yes.
And that is an artistic decision. What you decide to wear, how you decide to decorate your house, all of those things, how you curate your life are artistic decisions, and you fill your life with art.
That's right. Well, look, you even look at on like Netflix or anything. The fact that for a year the Americans couldn't create new content. Now everyone's going, there's nothing to watch on TV, and you sort of go, wow, entertainment is important for us because we actually need it every day to relax after being on the grind in our jobs, and you don't have to be an artist to need that. So I think it's been interesting to see that human beings need it. They need whatever form.
We need stories. We need things that make us really feel and feel connected.
Yeah, or take us away from reality even for an hour. Yeah. And then you feel so much better. Afterwards. So absolutely. So it has definitely been a very interesting time.
And I've seen a lot of, I guess, fatigue at the end of this year. I have spoken to many of my colleagues and counterparts in similar roles that just, it's now we've moved away from that really brutal upheaval of 2020 when everything shifted and it became really uncertain, and now it feels like it's an endurance exercise. It's like, okay, we know that uncertainty is front and center all the time now, but it's how we navigate the endurance of having to consistently change at the last second if need be. And I really see that fatigue arriving now, and I know I'm really conscious of supporting to the best of my ability all of my colleagues, going, I hear you, I see you, I feel you, and not just in our industry, in all industries. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we're both of us now planning our 2022 seasons. When we planned 2021, we thought, yay, no more COVID problems, and then that wasn't the case. So now I'm a little more cautious to think. I'm sort of ready for anything. I've planned. We've put the dates in. We've got the artists booked, but I think we're skilled now at going. Anything can happen, and we'll be able to make it. We'll be able to manage it. We'll be able to do something. It'll be all right.
Absolutely. We always say plan for the best and prepare for the worst simultaneously.
Exactly. But we've learnt that it's not the end of the world, basically. There's something we can do. Absolutely. So what has Australasian Dance Collective got happening in 2022?
We actually have a lot planned. Like I definitely am going to use the word planned.
Yes.
And at the moment, because of all the various exciting and juicy collaborative spaces we're moving in, we haven't been able to announce our whole program.
Okay, yes.
Being mindful of everyone's timelines. So there's some projects that I can't speak to, but the two that I can definitely, that I'm really excited for is 3, which is the show we presented in 2021, returns in 2022. But each year 3 is three different choreographers.
Yes.
So the lineup for 2022 is just so thrilling. They're all Australian makers. The first iteration of 3, we did a local maker, a national and an international. So we had a real range, whereas this year we've just gone for all 3 amazing independent makers.
Yes.
So they're not attached to any company. And I really see 3 as being this platform for these people with such exciting voices as makers that don't have their own company to work with some of the best dancers in Australia.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds...
So we have Cass Mortimer-Iper, who I worked with at Sydney Dance Company. He's a freelance dancer and choreographer and filmmaker.
Oh, wow.
He's incredibly talented. He is working with a company. We are also working with Kate Harmon, who is a very beloved Queensland artist. She's best known for her work with The Farm down on the Gold Coast. And she's come to work with the company as well. And then the final choreographer is the extraordinary Gabrielle Nankivell, who had a long career with Australian Dance Theatre in Adelaide. And she's done a lot of work as an independent maker, and I think between the three of them, they've got very different styles.
Yes.
And it's going to be a huge challenge for the dancers.
Yeah.
But the beauty of a program like that, having a real mix of choreographic language and music, you find that at least one of the pieces will appeal to different people in different ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where are you going to be performing that?
We're at QPAC,
Right.
which is, our
In
presenting
the
partner.
Playhouse or?
In the Playhouse,
Mhm.
and we open on the 16th of March,
Mhm.
and we're only in there for 1 week.
Oh, fantastic.
So short and sharp, and
Yeah.
and then the next exciting part of the program is we are taking this year's program of 3 1.0 on tour to about 12 different venues around Australia.
Oh, fantastic.
And that's when I go, I hope.
Yes. Well, so at least you know you can do Queensland.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what's been very interesting, is sort of making the most of what we've got here
Oh, absolutely.
in Queensland, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah.
So is 3 something it's going to happen every year for you? Are you going to turn it into a sort of a 5-year project? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to put a time limit on it, and obviously if other, I guess, collaborative projects arrive, we might not have it every single year, but it's going to be a regular staple of ADC's programming.
Yeah.
Offering that platform to really exciting makers.
Dancers, choreographers.
Yeah.
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 Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah. No, I'm really thrilled, and we had such great reception for the first program of 3. It was described by one reviewer as a show that reminded them of what it was to be human, to be alive.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's good.
That's right. That's what you're
That's
aiming
what we're aiming for.
Oh. So you said one of the choreographers also does film. Is he going to combine the film in that, or?
Yes, I don't know that we're going to combine film into the actual work that will be on stage, but I have started commissioning multiple iteration commissions. So the best example that we have is Jack Lister made a work for the stage called Still Life, and he also made a filmic version of the concept entitled Still Life as well, and it's just won Best Australian Dance Film and Best of the Festival at the Inspired Dance Film Festival. It's been included in many different film festivals around the world. And it's not a locked off reproduction of the stage show. It just takes some of the concepts from the show and has created this beautiful standalone art house film. Yeah. And so I've done the same with Cass for this year's 3.
Yes.
So his piece is entitled Limbic for the stage, but then he's made a film that's called Liminal. And it's an incredible 10-minute film. Yeah. So we probably will show elements of that in the foyer and activate other spaces. Yeah.
But see, I mean, that's what's been interesting when we couldn't perform live, is the amount of film things that we got doing. But I mean, you know, as in music, if you play a concert, it's poof up in the air unless you recorded it. So it's amazing now that you are having the opportunity to film things, not just a pure film of the concert, but to create, you know.
I think that definition, it's really interesting that you say that, because a lot of dance companies do get an archival, you know, a beautifully shot reproduction of the stage performance. But I think there's something so special about when you commission an artwork created specifically for the digital space, because the canvas of the digital space is so different. You aren't bound by the linear, you know, blockers of you know, time, and you know, you just have so much freedom when you're editing. So much control over crafting the emotional arc of the film, and you can create intimacy with the audience that you can't when you're up on the stage behind the fourth wall.
No, that's right.
So it's been really exciting for us, and we actually launched at the end of this year our digital suite, which is housed on our website. And not only does it have these specially commissioned films, but we have an entire creative learning suite that gives teachers access into the creative processes of the choreographers, lots of studio footage, dancers teaching the repertoire broken down, a lot of content that supports curriculum requirements. and it's all delivered digitally so that we can access or create access for regional and remote teachers and students.
And then the great thing is you don't actually have to spend that huge amount of money flying there to actually do it.
Yeah.
So and then they've got that ongoing contact with you as well.
Yeah.
It sounds really, really exciting.
Yeah, we're very proud of the digital suite and the creative learning suite.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much, Amy, for chatting. It's been
pleasure.
absolutely fascinating, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Three and your gorgeous company of dancers. They're all, there's beautiful pictures up on the walls there. They look absolutely stunning.
Well,
so congratulations, and yes, definitely, I'd love to be there. So great. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks for coming and having a chat with me
No,
today.
anytime. It's just a great excuse to catch up anyway. Great. Thanks a lot.